What's up everybody, Cynda here, and welcome back to another episode of Cynda Talks, and no joke this time. This game is so good, I gotta talk about it NOW! Splatoon 3 released in September of 2022, or a few days ago as of this video being written, and I've already 100%ed the story mode. Now this review is going to focus pretty hard on the story mode, but before we get into that I want to talk a bit about the game as a whole. It's pretty good, and a definite improvement over 2 in some pretty subtle ways, like being able to skip the news broadcast that reveals the map rotation and ranked battle modes, or a new lobby system where instead of waiting on the loading screen you can run around this training area. Now obviously talking about the multiplayer specifically would be doing this game quite the disservice, since it appears to be taking a very similar path that Splatoon 2 did in being a drip feed game, where we get updates throughout the years that add in new stages, weapons, and with the new catalog system, all kinds of things will be added in over time. And now I'd be doing the Nintendo critics quite the disservice without bashing the online. I will admit I've been getting more funky lag and connection issues, and while that may be a problem with my Pony Express internet, this is Nintendo we're talking about here. Also, with the game only being like a week old, it's still in a pretty bare-bones state. But you know what's not bare-bones? The story mode! I'm gonna preface this review by saying that this is very much a spoiler review, so I highly recommend you play the mode first and then come back, because for me at least, going into this game spoiler-free was a really good move. Luckily though, the story mode is actually fairly short, so there you go. For those wanting a spoiler-free experience, it's really good. That's it. Go play the game, please. The story this time around is that this mysterious fuzzy ooze has made things all goopy and gross, and instead of a water jetpack to fix this mess, you have your little buddy, who, when powered up with power eggs, can consume this ooze. So Captain Cuttlefish of the new Squidbeak Splatoon sends you on your way to battle the Octarians and stop the fuzzy ooze. And then he gets kidnapped by the diabolical Mr. Grizz, the Salmon Run guy. And then you fall into this huge underground society called Alterna. And the Squid Sisters from the first game are there. Also, the new idol group Deep Cut wants to steal treasure. Okay, that's it. Now back in Splatoon 1 and 2, there was a pretty established formula for the story mode, where you'd be enlisted into the Squidbeak Splatoon and given hero gear, which you then used to face off against diabolical Octarians. And it was alright the first time around, although I must admit that by the second game, the formula of run into the levels, slowly poke away for collectibles, and then battle to the finish had started to grow a bit stale. I wasn't a fan of Splatoon 2's story mode. It lacked variety, and having to grind to a halt to look for collectibles is the #1 thing to not put into your third-person shooter platformer. Luckily, however, Splatoon 2 gained some DLC later down the line, the Octo expansion, and boy, it fixed literally everything about the original story mode. It had infinitely more charm, more variety, a unique story, and no collectibles. And Splatoon 3 takes inspiration from both modes in a way that makes even Octo expansions seem alright by comparison. Now, what exactly do I mean by combining the two modes? Well, you get the hero gear and collectibles from the original, but the weapon selection of Octo expansion, which means that there's a refreshing amount of weapon variety, while also giving you the familiarity of the hero gear. Oh, by the way, you can still upgrade the hero gear using Sardinium and the new upgrade points, given whenever you clear out fuzzy ooze or ink enough turf. And this very clear sense of progression just feels good. There's a skill tree this time around, and while it's a little bit lackluster and if anything takes away the choice of what to upgrade specifically, it makes you think a little bit. Like, do you want a faster armor recovery time or splat bombs? And then it'll take a while until you can unlock the other parts of the tree. The hero gear also comes equipped with some fancy new tools, most notably Small Fry, your little buddy you got at the beginning of the game. He works as a sub-weapon that can interact with faraway objects or beat the ever-living tar out of enemies. And then the Splashdown special from Splatoon 2 returns as a special ability of the hero gear, and this is a great addition. The Splashdown in 2 was such a fun special, but it was very commonly ranked as the worst in the game, so repurposing it while giving a reason to ink the ground during hero missions is such a smart move. The world design this time around is very similar to the first two games, but all the collectibles are now in the hub worlds rather than the levels, which makes exploring the hub worlds way more fun. since they're still on the small side, which means they're concentrated with goodies and you're always nabbing new stuff even if you look for just a little bit. Also on your map, they highlight the general area of a collectible, which I didn't even know until I was like 90% of the way done collecting everything. But hey, the more you know. Now the collectibles themselves are pretty neat. You have the sunken scrolls from the first two games making their grand return. They provide a look into the culture of the Splatoon world from a mostly scientific standpoint, which is quite charming actually. Plus in this game they have gyro controls, which means you can move the little book around. Which sounds really dumb, but my gosh, it makes the scrolls so much better. As for the content of the scrolls, I've been a big fan of how Splatoon writes its lore, and Splatoon 1 nailed this with its sunken scrolls talking about the history of the world itself in a macro sense. And 2 and 3 taking the scrolls in a more micro direction isn't exactly my cup of tea. But Splatoon 3 fixes this problem so well, and I'll talk about that later because there are other collectibles here, like the capsules. These give you items to decorate your locker, golden records that I think function like the Yoshi's Island world map where the music just gets more exciting and busy the more of them you collect, but I'm not 100% sure, and Sardinium, which is used to unlock skill tree paths. As for the previously mentioned lore fix, this time around there are the new Alterna logs. And now, these are great! Like, really fantastic! As a Splatoon fan since late 2015, this is the big lore blowout that I've been waiting for. These go into really deep detail about what happened to the humans after the crazy climate disaster that Splatoon 1 referenced. And it goes into detail about the evolutionary process marine life underwent in order to become the funky fresh squids we know today. And it's glorious! I personally absolutely adore this kind of text log storytelling, and the entire Splatoon series has really scratched that itch. Alright, I've talked about the lore and the world design, but what about the actual gameplay? Well, to be frank, it's quite similar to Octo Expansion, but the first world starts very similarly to the first two story modes, jumping from level to level and running to the end. But this part of the story ends really quickly and you get dropped into Alterna, a secret underground civilization, except the only civilization is evil. Fuzzy ooze and Octarians that desperately need to subscribe to Dollar Shave Club rule the roost. Luckily, Small Fry can eat the fuzzy ooze using the power eggs you collect throughout the stages, and this is a great design choice. Power eggs having a story use is awesome, since now there's a reason besides just upgrades to take the riskier path to grab some extra ones, or poke around the overworld for some more. Anyways, the levels themselves in Alterna function like the Octo Expansion levels, except they got rid of the more annoying levels from that mode. The 8-ball and picture recreation levels come to mind, and in Splatoon 3, there is one, count 'em, one photo recreation level, and it's not even that bad. Also, no 8-ball stages. There's not much to say here besides, it's just fun, in a very simple way. There are some new gimmicks like the soaker blocks and ink wheels, which are neat, but the whole mode is just fun in that simple Nintendo way. I will add though, the radio dialogue trope that has persisted throughout the whole series is still as awesome as ever. I love it when they even point out potentially weird design choices. They wrote the characters to mirror what we're thinking as players, and it's awesome. Now as for something I can talk about quite a bit is the boss design. There are 5 bosses this time around and 4 of them are great, and one is... we'll get to that one. The boss of the first world is DJ Octavio, who is the final boss of the first 2 games, and this was a really fun callback. It's always a blast to have a final boss be a mini-boss later on just to show how far not only you, but the series has come. The song also here slaps. But this boss also does a great job of wrapping up the first section before Alterna. The second boss is Fry from Deep Cut, and she uses Octo Stomp to try and defeat you. Another great callback since Octo Stomp was a boss in both games, but now it's been subverted a bit and creates a brand new boss. In this fight, you blast the eels to knock the box over while it's spinning and take down Fry. Solid boss. Next up is Shiver, who uses a shark mech guy, and you can throw bombs at it King Dodongo style. Another solid boss. And for the 4th boss, go ahead, guess, yeah, it's Big Man from Deep Cut. So, Nintendo decided it would be absolutely hilarious to just make Big Man's boss fight an exact replica of the Phantom Manta boss fight from Super Mario Sunshine. Now, nostalgia is an awfully common element here on this show, but let me make a quick exception for this because Super Mario Sunshine is the game that made me a Nintendo fan, and I now understand what Nintendo's going for when they reference Super Mario Bros. For the 4,000th time.
It reminds me of when the Soviet Union collapsed.
Anyways, this boss fight does in fact function very similarly to Phantom Manta. Almost to a fault, I'd say, but the nostalgia gogs are on way too tight for me to notice. Alright, now we're at the final area. We've completed all of the levels, beat the bosses, and then we decide to enter the rocket ship that's very prominently featured throughout the story mode, and save Captain Cuttlefish from Mr. Grizz. The Alterna Space Center, as it's called, is a final test of your skills, and it's fairly easy. To compensate, it's more of a collection of levels, Octo Expansion ending style. And then you get to the rocket and Mr. Grizz is all boogly, he details his plan to take over the world, and then you fight in outer space. With the help of DJ Octavio's ship, you suck up all the fuzzy ooze and save everyone. Neat! The final boss, honestly, is probably the weakest boss in the entire game. There's the unique mechanic of the ship rotating, but that's about it. And the DJ Octavio part has some weird controls that take a second to get used to. But honestly, I'll take those few seconds of fumbling over a drawn-out tutorial, or even a tutorial at all, any day. After completing the game, you get a bunch of goodies, and most notably access to the final level, after Alterna. And this level is awesome. It's really challenging in a very satisfying way, and it's the perfect ending to a legendary single-player experience. In conclusion, Splatoon 3 is really good, both in its currently limited online, and its, well, not limited single-player mode. I may add on to this video once the, quote, large-scale DLC releases and the multiplayer receives some substantial content down the line, but for now, Splatoon 3 gets the official Cynda seal of approval.
Ah, space. The final frontier. Say, you ever wonder what goes on up there anyways?
Yeah, it seems like things nowadays are all getting worse. Movies, music, and heck, now even this.
Change the formula, right?
Yeah, I'd say. Couldn't get 50 million light years down the road for boom! Hyperspace conks out.
You know what? I might have a way to help you out.
Really?
Yeah, I've got a friend. Hungers his own stuff. One drop of that mess and you can get you straight to the booger system in half an hour.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Sounds important. Jorge, you look.
Me? What about you?
Oh, you know me. I got bad nerves.
Ah! See, I told you everything's gonna be alright.
Ah. All right, here.
Is that you?
All right, now read. Now you gotta read my stuff to me. No! All right, please don't. I'll put that in the thumbnail. Yeah, I'm able to do it. Jorge, you look.